Hey, I'm Midnight. I do free Deadlock coaching and some fast-paced guides. Let's talk about MOBA terms. We're going to start with the more basic terms and move on to more and more advanced terms. If you played MOBAs for a while, you probably know most of these. But if you haven't played a MOBA before, even if you're high ranked in Deadlock, I recommend looking at the timestamps and just seeing if there's any that you haven't heard of before and watching them. Also, there's going to be this gameplay in the background, but if at any time I need to show an example, I'll put it over it. Okay, so first off with the shotgun round, that if you're, emissary or below, you might not know these terms. CC is basically an abbreviation of crowd control, and that just means any type of stuns, like Ivy Stone Form stunning you, getting knocked off zip lines, any type of stun, any type of silence, Geist silencing, anything that completely stops you from moving, so like a slow wooden count, is just called CC or crowd control. Prio is an abbreviation of priority, which basically means if your wave is pushed further down the enemy's lane, you have Prio. If the wave is pushed onto your side of the map, the enemy has Prio. Generally, when the wave is on one side of the map, it means it's going to hit the objective and then slowly push back towards the enemy. This can be mitigated by freezing or slow pushing, which we'll get into in a second. Next is known as deathballing or air ramming. It's basically when your whole team groups up in one lane and just like all 6 of you or just 5 of you run down a lane in a big, death ball. When someone says jungle, they're basically referring to any of the camps on the map, which are, the little green dots or triangles with lines under them. And then to invade would be to go into your enemy's jungle and steal their camps. So you notice this a lot. If you win a big fight, your team will kind of take their camps as they're walking away. Or your team might, if you see a lot, going for Urn on the left side of the map and your team wants to trade a walker on the right side, you might also have a couple of teammates who invade your enemy's right side jungle. So that way they can steal a couple camps. Because a big part of Deadlock and MOBAs in general is denying your enemy's farm. Ganking and roaming is basically when you're in the laning stage, if you leave your lane to go look around for something in a different lane on the map, we'll say you push in wave and you have time while your wave is pushing back, you have a window to go roam around and look for something. And then if you were to go into one of your teammates' lanes and try to get a kill, it'd be ganking. You'd be like ganking the enemy by, hitting him with a bebop hook and pulling them, Abrams charging them from behind, just going in on them and setting up a kill from your team would be called ganking. Peal isn't specifically a MOBA term, but it's basically when, say one of your squishy characters like Haze or Infernus is getting dove on, and you as the Kelvin or Viscous use a rescue beam to pull them away, or like Viscous Cube would be considered Peel. Something that knocks the enemies away, like using a bebop punch to knock the enemies away from your squishies would be considered Peel, just basically peeling the enemies off of your squishy or low HP teammates. Scaling is a pretty simple one. It's just how well you do in the early game versus the late game. For example, Abrams wouldn't scale very well because he has a very strong early game, but he kind of falls off the later the game gets. Well, someone like Haze would have really good scaling because she is only okay in the early game, and then when she starts getting her unstoppable, her ricochet, her lucky shot, she starts being really, really strong as she gets into those like 30, 40k soul numbers. She really scales well. Calling to dive someone is basically calling to go kill them under an objective, whether that be earlier if you're calling to dive someone under their guardian, or even later if you're calling to dive someone under their walker. CD is just an abbreviation of cooldown. Proccing an item is basically triggering an item. For example, if you buy an item like Mythic Burst, when you use Ground Strike on Lash, it would proc Mythic Burst to do more damage. True damage isn't a term you'll hear too often because it isn't quite in Deadlock, but it's basically damage that isn't affected by armors. Shiv would classify as true damage because it's a percentage-based execute that if you pop barriers, it doesn't affect it, and no matter what, if you could have 100% ability power resist, and you would still take the same execute as someone with 0. So that would be true damage, but it's not exactly called that in this game, but you will hear people refer to it as that on occasion. To kite is basically to pull the enemies as they're chasing you while doing damage to them or just making them follow you so you can lure them into a trap. It's called kiting because it's much like you're flying a kite and the enemies are the kite behind you. Wave state or map control is basically where your waves are on the map. If all your waves are pushed up, you have good map control and you have good wave state. Well, you would have a very negative wave state if all your waves are pushed into your base or like sieging your base guardians or something like that. Calling for a siege would be calling to attack the enemy's base, and sieging is just the act of attacking the enemy's base or inner objectives. When someone says fog of war, it's basically the area of the map where you cannot see and you do not know where anyone is. If you watch my coaching videos, I often say that this is bad because you're chasing into fog of war, which basically just means because you're chasing into the unknown, because you don't know if there's 5 bebops hiding behind the next corner, all ready to hook you. Also, if you're new to MOBAs and you like guides like this, please show the video some love. Okay, onto the little more complicated splitting. It's basically when your team is on one side of the map or taking a fight on one side of the map, deathballing on one side of the map, and you choose to split away from them and go push an objective or a walker where your teammates aren't around. So you are split from them sieging an objective. Normally this will end in you dying for a walker, but that is obviously good. A walker is far more valuable than your life. Backdooring is basically when something like Patron is knocked or shrines are exposed, and an enemy like Haze or Wraith, someone with really high gun damage, will go behind a wave and try to kill the objective. Freezing and slow pushing. If you want a good breakdown of freezing, I have a laning guide. I'll put a card up now. I'll put it at the end of the video. I'll put it in the description, all of that. I break down freezing in that laning guide and really talk about it more. But the TLDR of what it is when the enemy's wave has more minions, so you just only last hit your minions, or maybe you thin the wave a tiny bit. Again, I talk about this more in the guide. So the wave doesn't really push to the enemy and is just frozen on your side of the map. This is great when you're behind, or even when you're really ahead, to kind of force the enemy to come out. Slow pushing is basically this, but when you don't have enough minions to freeze, so you just kind of like push it slowly. If say you kill the Infernus, but he's only on, it's very early game, so he's only on like a 5-10 second respawn timer, so you just want to slow push because you can't get the wave into the tower in time. So just slow pushing makes his minions kill a couple of your minions, so he misses a couple minions before he comes back, if that makes sense. Okay, executing. And no, this is not like shiv executing or anything like that. This is when you choose to die to an objective after your timer for getting hit or killed by an enemy would make it so they don't get a kill or assist, and you just die to the objective because it's quicker than going on the zipline back to your base. I did a little testing, and as you can see, the holiday shoots me at 5:25, and I wait until 5:35 to die to the objective, and she is not credited with any kill or assist. So as long as you die 10 seconds after the enemy has shot you, they will not be credited with an assist or kill. And from the enemy's stairs to your base, it takes about 20 seconds to zip back. So that means as long as the death timers are shorter than 20 seconds and you don't care about your KD, it is better for you to execute. I also tested when death timers become longer than 20 seconds, and that is around the 11th minute mark. Okay, and now for the most complicated term, proxying. I don't think, the reason this is more complicated because it's in Deadlock, but it's a lot more low-key than in other games. I think as Deadlock is played more and more, and as more and more characters are added, we'll start seeing this more. As players get better and better at the game, I think we'll start to see more proxying. It's basically when you go behind the enemies and you kill their wave from behind them. So say you're at the very end game, your whole team wiped, you're just a lonesome shiv, and all the enemies are going to kill your patron. You would go around them, snake behind them, shoot the minions off of the zipline, with whatever wave they are sieging with, and you would kill the minions. So basically, they would lose their wave. If you kept killing the minions before they got to the enemies would not have minions to siege your base with, and therefore you would really slow down their push way, way more than if you had just gone and fought them. Because when there's not enemy minions nearby, most objectives have a resistance. Again, I rarely see this done at the higher elos, but I think more and more as players get better and better, and as and in MOBAs there tend to be certain characters that are a lot better at proxying, which I don't think we've really seen a proxy-based character yet, but I think we will see this more and more. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, I already did all the shilling, but please leave a comment with any feedback you have. I know my breaths got slightly picked up in this one more than normal. I readjusted my filters, and apparently I talk louder when I record than when I stream, so that sucks. Anyway, I really hope this was helpful. Please let me know if it was. And as always, keep it real.